Hello. Sorry, my microphone wasn't on. Welcome to Philosophy Complaints and Bullshit, where we philosophy bullshit and complaints, where we philosophize, talk bullshit and complain. Because I believe in giving things that actually deserve hate. They're just hate. Ignore my hair. Ignore my nails. I'm the nail technician. So they will get done when they get done. As far as my hair goes, it just needs to be wet. You know how your curls, they just get stuck to each other. Anywho, we have an episode coming out, by the way. This, I guess you could say, is kind of like a preview, precursor, explainer, whatever you want to call it. Interesting. I lost my train of thought that fast, y'all. Please bear with me. I just took my medicine like 30 minutes ago. Anyway, we have an episode coming out, and it is very interesting that prior to finishing the episode, because I had to come back a day later, I was talking about honestly, I don't remember everything that I spoke about, but I do know that I wanted to end going into why I personally am struggling with coming back into being a full-time creator. And I honestly don't believe I ever will be a full-time creator ever again, just because like I have real things that need to be taken care of. And I could be working instead of begging people to, and this is no shade. This is just me personally. If I had more like more resources, more assistance, more support, then it would definitely be possible for me to kind of put some things to the side and sacrifice for the greater good of, my creativity. But because I am the sole provider for all of my needs and my cat's needs, like I can't be, I don't have the luxury of focusing on things that aren't immediately beneficial or lucrative. And I wanted to get into how, not even wanted to get into, because I feel like I talk about this all the time, but I happened to watch a Olay and Friends episode that we probably know about at this point now in the week, which I've never watched the show before, but I was interested in hearing about the conversation, especially because Laverne was willing to be a part of the conversation with other people having opinions about her personal love life, or analysis over her personal love life, rather. Um, but I wanted to watch the episode, and it was, I enjoyed most of the conversation, but there were some pieces that were like, and there were some people in there that I kind of, because I know them to be progressive, but also, and this was a point that was made in the conversation, a lot of progressive people are not progressive in their personal lives, or a lot of left-leaning people are not that left-leaning in their personal lives. And I just, those points were hit on as well, about why people aren't walking the talk in their own personal lives, but also why you should, and how certain things should be sacrificed for the greater good of the collective. And I don't think it's just the collective. I think if you really boil it down to its essence, it's for the greater good of you as well. because you're not subjecting yourself to people or spaces that will never be able to relate to you, will never fully be able to respect you, um, and place conditions on why you are the special kind of the others that they don't like, that they're choosing to make an exception for. Like, yeah, the shit is. But anyway, so I had things, feelings, whatever, and then I watched the conversation, and it kind of helped to find better language, I guess, or language that was more like aligned with actual research versus just me um trying my best with all of the stuff going on in my brain to express on the outside how my mind is processing the information, or how my mind is processing the I'm so sorry. But anywho, I feel like the expert on the topic that I haven't been able to really formulate the words for as it pertains to this exact topic, and not just me utilizing language that like immediately comes to mind, because I do read, I am well spoken, but at the same time, words are hard for me, especially when speaking them versus like writing them down. And I feel like I do write how I speak, but also I feel like I can and will write in a more, I guess, academic tone, or a more professional, intellectual tone than when I talk. And again, that's because words are hard for me, and I'm not going to ever sound as smart in real life as I do on paper. I don't know how else to explain that. I'm a very curious person. I'm a very wondrous person. I'm a very I like to be informed and in the know, but also like sometimes all that academic shit and all the reading and that should be too much. No shade, but it's just too much. And then when you get too intellectual with it, and you just focus solely on numbers, facts, data, I feel like it can take away from actually applying it in reality. And I feel like it also can make it hard for us to utilize the other powers of our brain, because not only are our brains used to research, store information, um, control our bodies and our motor skills, so on and so forth. But they definitely also our brains can be utilized for like more spectacular, magical type things. We don't always have to be in a space of quote unquote reality, or you see how words are so hard for me right now. But we don't always have to be in this space where everything is easily defined and very concrete and proven. And I think that's the beauty of being human beings, is that yes, that is a part of us, and we do need facts, and we do need concreteness, and we do need absolutes. But at the same time, there is a more magnificent, a more intuitive, a more spiritual, a more transcending type of energy within us. So it's not all just what you can see and hear and talk about and do here in the flesh, but it's also about what you can imagine, the energy that you can produce, the energy that you can give out to others. Like all of those things are important as well. And I feel like they factor into the human experience. So we don't only build things or learn how things operate through factual information, but we create realities, and we create groups, we create families, we create energies and understandings and thoughts and feel like we create these things or transfer them along utilizing aspects of our brains. I'm sorry if that was a bit confusing. I'm trying to do multiple things at one time because I need this to go fast so I can go pay my rent and then go to the movies because I really want to see Weapons. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of talk about some of the points because I did a little further digging, I guess you could say, or looking through people's thoughts from those who were involved in the conversation that I kind of touched on in the episode prior to this. But this is going to come out first, I believe, probably. But anyway, one moment, please. Okay. So let me try to gather my thoughts here because I feel like I'm all over the place right now, and I apologize for that. But I just woke up. I just took my medicine. I have not had any weed yet, and the caffeine is just like kicking in a little bit. Need some scissors. I love having a little fur bag to cuddle with. I don't know. I just like her body warmth, the feel of it. I don't know if anybody else experiences that, but I don't know. I think it's because I'm just touch deprived. Like this really thick lady sat next to me on the bus yesterday, and it was really packed on there. And I'm gonna sound like a creep, but like, we had to kind of squeeze in so she could sit down, and she had her kid with her. And so like her hips and her thighs were just like next to me. And it just felt really nice because they were soft and warm, and it wasn't like, I don't know. I just like that feeling of being like in proximity to um warmth, especially in the presence of a body. And when I mean like a nice body, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a thick person, but just like that aspect feels soft. My cats are furry and soft, so that's what I mean by that. But anywho, did more digging, research, whatever you want to call it, into the people who were involved in the conversation, particularly Deshaun. And I have to correct myself. from the video that I made. Deshaun is not non-binary. Deshaun identifies as ungendered, meaning that their political views and activist work has brought them to the understanding that us as non-white people, in particular Black people, we don't have the luxury of being considered binary anything. And because that is the world that we live in, and that is the systems that were created to keep us in this world that we live in from inception to now. And so I thought that was an interesting point, and actually gave me a better understanding of non-binary, because I'm not going to lie, I am very old school gay, I guess you could say. And the people that I am around are old school gay for the most part. I do have some non-binary friends, but we don't really I guess we don't really talk a lot of theory or whatever about gender. And I don't feel like that's necessarily their responsibility to do with me either. Like, if we happen to get into the conversation, we get into the conversation. But I don't think that it's pertinent for us to, um, they don't have to educate me, and I'm already accepting and understanding of who they tell me they are. Like, I've always been that person. I don't need to question who you tell me that you are. I may have questions, but it's not my place to question you. It's not my place to, like, I don't have to have understanding about who you tell me you are. All I have to do is respect who you tell me that you are. While also doing what I need to do on my end to educate myself and get the better understanding it is that I need, if that makes sense. But anyway, I have to correct myself. Deshaun is not non-binary. They are ungendered. And I was trying to describe their phenotype without misgendering them. And I believe I said a masculine non-binary, but technically they would be trans masc, because they do identify under the trans umbrella. So they would be considered trans masc, ungendered person who uses they them pronouns. That nigga and that bitch, which I love. But so I'm excited to read their book that dives into concepts of and analysis of and studies of desire, and how that is a social construct that plays out in pretty much every aspect of life. And just like misogyny and racism is literally ingrained in every aspect, to the point that when you are that person that brings that up, people constantly eye roll, like, oh my God, like, are we talking about the race thing? But the reality is that everything has to do with some aspect of the race thing. It has to do with some aspect of misogyny. It has to do with some aspect of sexism. Like, it just is what it is, unfortunately. We live in that world. And I guess that is another term I learned, but that I'm excited to do more digging into. I guess that is my Afro pessimism in me, because I do believe that living in a place where we have white people who have created these systems that place them above non-white people, and then we create a hierarchy based on how willing you are to be a participant in white supremacy or white supremacist ideals, which include the nuclear family, which include the type of jobs that are worthy of respect or admiration or whatever. That includes having to present a certain way based off of who people think you are, and then kind of like refining that to a certain level of appropriateness or neat, put together. We assign different terms that are associated with Blackness, darkness, um, femininity, with things that are ugly or negative. We tend to, um, and that doesn't just mean like, oh, you hate women, you hate fat women, you hate dark fat women, but that can translate into queer communities where the men or the masculine counterparts will receive less respect because they are dark skinned, because they are plus size, because they are too feminine. You'll see that in the workspace where the girls who or the employees rather who are more docile, more obedient, very smiley, very he fake with everyone, even if it reads as fake, because they never give the impression that they're upset or they're combative or argumentative. They'll get precedence over other people, even if they don't do as good of work or they're lazy or they are not really invested in the progress of the company, the team, whatever. Like they will still get precedence over those who put their work. Like there's so many different factors that play into it. And it you can see it in different communities, different spaces constantly. Like I literally see it all the time. I see it when people talk about their pets, their animals, like trying to place it on me and my pets and my animals because I have two female cats. Like it literally translates everywhere. We cannot escape the reality that sexism, colorism, racism, classism is deeply rooted in everything that we are involved in the world. And that the awareness of that, the knowledge of that is where you start to figure out how do you how do you protest against the system? How do you perform actions in your actual life that are not perpetuating this this ignorance, this hate, these constructs of desire? And it's not, and I mean, it's not necessarily easy, and I'm not even sure it's quite possible to do it in totality, to be honest, especially being a minority or a part of a marginalized community. I don't think that it is completely possible to sit here and say, I am 100% divesting from all aspects of the system because unfortunately it is deeply ingrained and embedded in the entire world. So not only do you have to deal with it at work or at school, when you're trying to get a job, when you are out at somebody's business or on the train at the mall, you deal with it in your relationships. And I'm gonna be honest here. This is not coming from um an angry place or a judgmental place, but this is just being honest that just sit there and think about it. You have some relationships, or it could be all of your relationships where they might not necessarily be bad people, bigoted people, but they still do hold problematic ideals about the world. They still will spew ignorant opinions and rhetoric about things that you guys are observing together or experiencing together or are sharing with one another because this is the world that we live in, and people feel as though in order to find their community, I talk about this, find their space, I talk about this, find acceptance and relatability, and to know that they are not going to be ostracized and alone, and not have those resources, and not have those people come when they need it, and not have um, support and love and kinship. They are going to have to, even if they don't 100% believe in it, they're going to have to accept some of these community beliefs, these community staples. They're going to have to go with it. That's why you have women who think all men cheat. That's why you have gay men who think all men cheat. That's why you have um, a community of gay men who believe that they cannot date their brothers. And by that, I mean Black men believing they should not be in relation to other Black men. And I'm not a Black gay man, so I'm not going to get too deep into that, because that's their story to tell. And I feel as though that is their conversation to unpack. But I do have opinions about it. I do have analysis about it, because I'm a very observant person. I do read. I do um, watch, conversations and talks. And I do care about the world and things that happen. And I want to be aware of the place that I live in, not just, again, from an experience standpoint, or even from watching other people's stories, but I want to be able to read what happened prior to. I want to know the history of things. I want to know the pattern that have been established based off of these beliefs, these behaviors, these actions. Um, so these constructs of desire play directly into our ability to get support, not only in academic spaces, not only in uh, community spaces where we all might be public facing, or we all might be some sort of intellectuals, or we may all be some sort of like thought leaders, or uh, whatever these subgroups are that are aligned or can relate in totality or on most points, whether it's identity, whether it's the work that you're doing, whether it's the environment that you grew up around, like whatever. We hold on, I lost my thought. Make sure that my microphone. Okay. Um, but anyway, we find ourselves being the object of others' desires, or trying to fit into the mold of others' desires. Even when we may not necessarily want to, even if our goal is not to be quote unquote picked or chosen, because of the world we live in and the way these constructs operate, we have to adapt, and we have to compromise pieces of ourselves in order to fit into these spaces and be accepted into these spaces. Please hold. Oh my God, for the love of Christ, it is so hot in this apartment, because I had two um, air conditioners, and they took one because apparently it was leaking downstairs. Mind you, nobody notifies me of anything until they come knocking on my door when I'm not home to do shit. Mind you, I already have issues with these people. Um, Anywho, Um, without being super long-winded, because I did not want this to be a full episode, because I can talk for a couple hours, to be quite honest with you. Um, I want us to be mindful of how we play into these constructs of desire. And I know that, again, it is not possible or fair to demand that everybody just completely divest themselves from it, because at the end of the day, survival is paramount, especially when you work for yourself, especially when you are Black and queer and a woman, especially when we live in this economy and then we live in this government regime. We got to do what we got to do to make it. But at the same time, I don't think we should settle in that. I don't think we should get comfortable with that being the way to live out our lives until we die. I think that we at some point have to be willing to again sacrifice some smaller things for the progress of not only the greater good, but all of us. And I think a lot of times when you say stuff like that, people get the impression that you want them to give up everything they've ever wanted in life and anything that'll make them happy and prosperous for other people. And that's not it. If life is better for some of us, it's better for all of us. If we find liberation for these people, we can find liberation for everybody. So that doesn't just include you giving up stuff for other people to be happy and you're suffering. No, you will in turn be happy too. And maybe we wouldn't feel the need to settle into these illusions of what good and bad or right and wrong is in life. We won't have to make sacrifices for things that we really believe in order for us to have things that society tells us that we're supposed to have. We can actually pinpoint what it is that actually matters to us, and we can invest our energy into those spaces. And we can spend more time doing those things instead of stressing ourselves out with things that don't serve us, things that serve other people, and then not having the energy to be good people. Because I feel like that's what life does. I feel like that's what these systems do. They drain you of your energy, they drain you of your I don't even want to say they drain you of your compassion, because I feel like if that's who you truly are, then that's who you will remain. But it does make it exhausting to constantly be that actor, right? So like you're struggling with um money, you're struggling with school, you're struggling with your job, you're struggling with your relationships, you're trying to keep up with yourself, you're trying to improve your life and improve yourself for the better, you're trying to progress and do all of these things. Everyone is kind of like isolated on their own ends. People don't have the time to really be in community with one another. People don't have the resources to really be in community with one another. All people can really offer is maybe their presence and relating to what you're going through. And sometimes we need more than that. A lot of times we need more than that. People are exhausted from work and spending energy pretending to be the right kind of person so that they do progress at work and they do make the right networks. They do make the right impressions upon people. So many things. And so at the end of the day, as you're dealing with all of your own personal shit and trying to deal with life, you may not necessarily have the tools to be there for others. And that's the point. The point is to keep us isolated and separated. When you are constantly isolated and feel as though when you need it, people are not available, and that's if they want to be or they just are not able to be, you start to feel like, well, I'm not going to give either because I'm so stressed out and I'm so exhausted that I don't have anything to give either. And I don't want to be constantly giving and nobody is able to give me anything. And that's why I hate when people try to pretend like relationships are not inherently transactional. I know that sounds bad and it has a lot of negative connotations, and that's a conversation for a different day. But I have always been of the mindset that every relationship is transactional. Now, I don't think that means there are specific requirements in order for these groups to, or these people rather, to be in communion together. Like, I think that is dependent upon what you think you need and want in your life. But I feel like every relationship is transactional. Everyone. Down to a mother and a child, down to parents and their kids, down to a man and his wife. Like, every relationship is transactional. So when you get to a space where you feel like you are, even with your lack of, you are still in a space of even being willing to give, and you feel as though everyone else has resigned themselves to their own personal bubble and they're like, nope, not doing it, then you get tired of it too. Or you feel as though you're not able to express that too. Even if you want to, you feel like you shouldn't. Um, because of how lonely we are and because of how drained we all are, we really want connection and reciprocity. We want to feel like we matter just as much as whoever matters to us. We want to feel valuable and important. We want to feel seen. And think this is going back to something I was saying before I took a pause. I forgot exactly, but it's not about the quantity. It's not about acceptance everywhere, but it is about having the acceptance. It is about having the people. So if you are used to not having it, then yes, absolutely, that's going to be something on the forefront of your mind. That's going to be something that's important to you in life. That is a need as human beings, to have community, to have relatability and understanding. That doesn't mean every single person has to be your best friend and love you, but that does mean that you need somebody. We need people. We need people. I don't care what you guys say. We need people. We cannot do this life without anybody. But most importantly, what I want to leave you guys with, and we can discuss in the comments or send me DMs, whatever. I really love talking about these things, and I really only have one person to talk about them with. That's why I started talking about them to a camera. But I think it's important that we, and this is a point that Deshaun made too, about a white MAGA Republican cop was not Laverne Cox's only choice of a romantic partner, regardless of the limitations that she and other Black trans women may feel when it comes to being in relations with other Black people and Black men, Black straight men. Um, regardless of these preferences that are that we're conditioned to have based on these constructs of desire, I think we need to be willing to sit and look at ourselves really deep down and question our willingness to participate and further perpetuate these systems. And I know a lot of times people like to think, oh, not me. Like, I am unproblematic. I am woke. I have gotten a fucking clue. And so they think that they don't exhibit any of these behaviors, and it's not true. Because if that was the case, we wouldn't be um code switching at work. We wouldn't be changing our names for jobs. We wouldn't be changing our hair for jobs. We wouldn't not look a certain, like edges have to be straightened. Even the simple fact that, and that's not to say you should go to work and tell all your business, but even the simple fact that we cannot go to work and just be ourselves, there's always a piece of us that has to remain hidden in order for us to not even be professional, but to have this acceptance that we are a good employee and good for the company. I want us to be more willing to interrogate our willingness to participate in these systems. And not just in romantic relationships, because we do it especially on the internet, on social media. And, social media has now become, because of the immediate access, it's become a good place to build platforms, whether you are a personality, whether you are an influencer, whether you are an artist or a business owner. And because of the access and the amount of all of these people, brands, businesses all over the place in constant succession, because that's a key factor as well, you can't pay attention to everybody. You're not going to pay attention to everybody. But it's too much too fast that I feel like people have completely abandoned their personal likes and their personal enjoyment in order to be a part of the collective. And because we're able to see so much of the collective so quickly all the time, people are constantly um, criticizing how they're presenting, if they are being, in a way, deemed acceptable for said community. To the point that even if you're not a part of a certain aesthetic or like subgroup, like the alt kids or even if you aren't one of those people and you just do your thing, you find yourself scrolling through online and being like, maybe I should define my aesthetic more. Or, maybe I should um, kind of curate this particular thing on my online platforms a bit more, because that is how, or some of the ways that you find these niche communities and these places of acceptance. Because we have all of this information and all of these platforms available to us in such fast succession, people our not our are people are exclusively giving energy and attention to things that are already popular, that are already trendy. Because these communities say that's what you're supposed to be interested in. That's what you're supposed to like. That's what's popular. That's what's it. That's what's fabulous. That's what's cool. That's how you find like-minded people. That's how you find friends. Or because of what I mentioned about the brain also being able to create magnificence, the brain being able to create realities, the brain being able to create um energies and the essence of magic, that people will actually believe that in order to manifest particular things into their life, that they have to solely be around these type of people, like these type of people, hang out with these kind of people, look up to these kind of people. And it creates an environment where a lot of people are just ignored, even if they shouldn't be. I'm gonna just keep it a buck. There are people who are super talented, super creative, super innovative, um, have ideas that can really transcend and take us to new heights and really usher in the new era of art and music and fashion and design and whatever. But we continue to promote mediocrity, not only because these people have the best aesthetics or the appearance of the lifestyle that we want, but I think also because people realize that they are mediocre, and that's not a dig. Everyone is not great. Everyone is not spectacular, and that's okay. Um, and so I think sometimes people see popular people or celebrities, and they feel like, oh, I had to do so much in order for me to, or I would have to do so much in order for me to get to those heights. But now, because it's a little bit more accessible, all I have to do is look the part. I don't have like it's easier for me to become that. I can actually aspire to these things because I kind of fit the mold better. I don't have to be iconic. I don't have to be a genius. I don't have to be a prodigy. I don't have to be a psycho that like trains and practices and studies like I have nothing else to do in life. I can be fun and carefree and do what the fuck I do. I just have to look the part. So just something to think about.